Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome to another Perfumery Basics video. So in today's video, I want to cover the topic of musks. And what is a musk? What's its function in perfumery and things like that. So to dive into this, first I'm gonna just tell everybody, don't be afraid to use musks. When I first started getting into perfume making and things like that, my first initial notion was, I hate musk. Like, I hate muskiness, I hate musky things, and I don't want to use musk in any of my blends, blah blah blah. And boy, let me just tell you, I was wrong. I was just so naive and stupid to even think that in the beginning, because the more I learned what a musk, what its purpose and function is, and the fact that there's just so many different musks out there, then I started to learn them and use them a little bit more, and then the light bulb kind of clicked, and then I got it, and I was like, oh, okay, musks really are that important. And there's so many different types of musks. So I would say, what does a musk do to a fragrance? Now, this is a generic blanket statement, and for me personally, a musk generally just creates this underlying kind of warmth, a little bit of texture, and it serves a purpose as being a fixative. And basically a fixative, for those that don't know, it just means it acts as it fixates the perfume or the fragrance a little bit longer to the skin. Now, it doesn't mean by using a lot of musk, it doesn't mean that your perfume's just gonna last a hell of a lot longer. That's not the case, but it is a type of fixative in the same sense that, like, cedar wood is a type of fixative, benzoin is a fixative, labdanum is a fixative. So anything with a long odor profile or a long odor longevity is typically a fixative, and that's the same for musk. So the more I learned about musk and started diving deeper in, how it's used, I learned that in most modern day perfumery, on average, this is just an average figure, if you look at perfume formulas based on, if you're browsing online formulas, if you have GCMS formulas of popular fragrances, on average, musks are used about 10 to 20% of the perfume's formula. Now, that's not going to say it's 10 to 20% of the overall perfume, the finished perfume. I mean just the raw formula. So about 10 to 20% is primarily musk, and I was shocked to see that much musk is being used, because when I first started making perfumes, I would be so afraid to use musk. I would only use like 2, maybe 3% musk, because I didn't want my perfume to smell musky. But again, the more you learn the different types of musk is when you can start to use a lot more of it, and we'll explain a little bit more of that in a little bit. So there's two kinds of musks, in my opinion. You have what's called a functional musk, and then the other one is an odorous musk. So a functional musk, to me, typically is your very clean, very transparent, the musk that is like hard to smell. You can bear it, like if you smell it through the bottle and you're like, I don't smell anything. So, but it's very clean, it's very transparent, hard to smell. That's more of a functional type of musk. You can go heavy-handed with that kind of musk in your perfume formula, because it's not really scented and it's used primarily as a fixative. So we'll get more into different types of functional musk in a little bit. So the other kind of musk to me is the odorous musk. Now, odorous musks are still a fixative, but because they start to impart more of a scent, and you'll notice an odor, like if you smell it, you'll be like, okay, now I can actually smell something. And there's different kinds of odorous musk. There's some that lean towards the animalic side, some that lean a little bit more fruity, some lean a little bit more textured, some, there's all these different kinds, because you can actually begin to smell what the musk is, and they're generally stronger. So you would use those a little bit lower in your formula, which again, we'll get to more of that in a little bit. So let's talk about some functional musks. I've got a few notes here, and let me grab some musks and we'll go through. I'm not going to talk about every single type of musk that's out there. I'll talk about a few that I have in my in my stash of things. And it's kind of like this is like a blanket statement and how you can use them. And towards the end of the video, I'll explain how you can actually mix some of these musks up to kind of tailor and fit more of a specific, like a perfume theme or a profile that you're going for. So the first functional musk. Now the first few musks we'll talk about are just the functional ones. So again, functional musks are clean, transparent, almost odorless, and they're primarily fixative. So the first one we're going to talk about is GALAXOLIDE. Probably the most used clean, they call it white musk, and to me it doesn't smell white, it just smells transparent. It doesn't smell like anything. It's almost talked about as called a laundry musk, and I do get that because when you smell it, it's very clean, linen-like, and you'll notice that a lot of people use the term laundry musk because in laundry detergent back in the 80s, 90s, even today, they use a lot of musks in laundry detergent to give it that kind of clean, pillowy kind of scent to it. So GALAXOLIDE is probably the #1 used white, white transparent fixative musk, and they use it a lot because again, you can barely smell it, but it's used primarily as a fixative, so you can really go crazy with this. In formulas that I've seen, GALAXOLIDE, you can go 10 to 20% of your perfume formula just with GALAXOLIDE alone. And GALAXOLIDE, because it's such a clean, transparent musk, I call it the workhorse musk. You can use it for anything. If you're going for like a clean men's summertime, scent where you really don't want to impart much of a smell, GALAXOLIDE works wonders for that. The next musk we'll talk about is ethylene BRASSYLATE. Again, it's another clean, transparent white musk. It's almost identical to GALAXOLIDE, to be honest with you. However, it's slightly more, you can smell ethylene BRASSYLATE a little easier than GALAXOLIDE, but I would say the odor profile is still the same as GALAXOLIDE. It's still clean, linen textured, like a soft, warm towel from the drying machine. But it's pretty transparent. You don't really smell much of ethylene BRASSYLATE. So again, this is another what I consider to be a workhorse musk where you can use it freely, almost as much as GALAXOLIDE. But because it imparts more of a scent now, more so than GALAXOLIDE, I would probably say you could use this maybe 5 to 10% of your perfume's formula can be ethylene BRASSYLATE. Let's see. We've got now, let's see if I have it here. Another clean, transparent white, musk that I consider a functional musk is EXALTOLIDE Total. So now EXALTOLIDE Total, again, same odor profile as GALAXOLIDE and ethylene BRASSYLATE where it's white, clean, transparent. But this one, you'll notice it's more scented, it's more so scented than ethylene BRASSYLATE. So now you're getting into the same odor profile, but now because it's a little bit stronger odor strength, you wouldn't want to use as much of this as you would as GALAXOLIDE or ethylene BRASSYLATE. So this one you could probably use 5 to 10% of your perfume formula and be okay. Again, it's a nice clean, white, transparent, not as transparent as the other two, but it's still considered a white, clean, linen, kind of pillowy, soft musk. But now we're starting to step up into the odor profiles where it's becoming more and more noticeable. You can detect these and smell these easier. Let's see. And the last one I'll talk about for the clean, functional musk is TONALIDE. TONALIDE, I believe, is also called FIXALIDE. Now this one here is different than the prior three we just talked about. And TONALIDE, to me, is the epitome of warm, pillowy, towels, like laundry towels, hot laundry towels. Like this has such a great pillowy, soft linen, like cotton texture. This to me, of all the ones we've talked about thus far, is probably the one that I would consider the most laundry-like. And TONALIDE is great for men's fragrances, especially if you want to do, let's say you're doing a men's fragrance and you're using some GALAXOLIDE, but you're like, you know what, I need something a little bit more scented. TONALIDE is definitely scented. I can pick up TONALIDE very easily, and it's very clean. It's that noticeably clean, and that's what's typically an odor profile for, like, especially in men's fragrances, is you're gonna want a white musk that is noticeably clean and easily detectable. TONALIDE's a great choice for that. You could always mix TONALIDE with GALAXOLIDE, and you know it'll tone down the powderiness and the linen-like of that if you want to. But we'll talk about more of mixing musks in a little bit later. Now let's get into some of what I call the odorous musks. So let's say, okay, here's a popular one, AMBRETTOLIDE. So now when you get into these I consider to be the odorous musks, because now when you smell these, you can easily smell and detect what an odorous musk is, whereas the more functional, clean white musks are very hard to smell. The odorous musks are very easy to smell. And AMBRETTOLIDE is a very sweet, it's definitely, now you're getting into the warmer shades of musk. It's not animalic, it's not dirty smelling, it's just very warm and comforting, but at the same time it's got this sweetness. And AMBRETTOLIDE kind of mimics what you would get from ambret seeds, which is typically sweet and warm. And that's exactly what AMBRETTOLIDE is to me. It's a very warm, sweet musk. It's really great to use if you want a more sensual, sweeter warmth in your kind of your base notes. You can use a little bit of this in there. Now AMBRETTOLIDE, because it's more of a noticeable, it's an easier perceived musk, I wouldn't use as much of these kind of musks as I would like GALAXOLIDE, TONALIDE, or things like that. I would probably only use 1 to 2% of my perfume formula would be for AMBRETTOLIDE. But again, you can mix this and use AMBRETTOLIDE with GALAXOLIDE and things like that. Again, we'll talk a little bit more on that later. Let's see. Okay, so here's another scented odorous musk called AURATOUCH. This one I freaking love. There's something about this that is so strong, it's got this sweetness to it, almost berry-like. Kind of berry, there's just something sensual about AURATOUCH. And the more I smell it, like, this is the musk that I love to gravitate towards a lot, even though I shouldn't for some reason, but I want to because it just smells so damn good. So AURATOUCH is actually, it's a blend of musk. I forget who makes it. I think maybe it's Firmenich or IFF makes it, but this is certainly it's a more darker, rounder scented musk, but it leans definitely towards the fruitier shade, so it's kind of dark and sweet. But AURATOUCH is actually a combination. It's a mixture of like HAVETOLIDE, ROMANDOLIDE, HABANOLIDE, EXALTOLIDE, and then there's GALAXOLIDE. So it's a mixture of all these different musks. So if you wanted to buy just one musk, like just a generic combo, like this is a great one. But we could always mix this with other musks, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So AURATOUCH, it's not as strong as AMBRETTOLIDE, the musk we just smelled now. So this one here, you could probably use 5 to 10% of AURATOUCH in your perfume formula. And then if you want to take your musks beyond 10%, you would probably mix it with, like, you know, more GALAXOLIDE or something like that. Let's see, another scented musk. we? Where are we? Here we go. Okay. EDENOLIDE. EDENOLIDE is also known as APRETTOLIDE. They're kind of one and the same, but they're slightly different, but they share the same CAS perfumery number. But EDENOLIDE has, to me, it leans more towards, it's almost like it could be a functional white musk, but there's this creaminess to it that you don't find in a white musk. It's almost in the same sense of where sandalwood has a creaminess to it. EDENOLIDE or APRETTOLIDE has that same kind of creamy texture to it, but it's also fruity sweet in a sense of, it leans a little bit more towards crisp apple, hence the name APRETTOLIDE, or EDENOLIDE it's also known as. So you get this creaminess. It's still, technically it's almost like a white musk, but it's heavily scented. It's got this creamy texture. It's got this bright crisp apple kind of underlying note to it, but it also has this powdery floralcy. And to me, APRETTOLIDE or EDENOLIDE works great in women's fragrances because it has all those things that you would want to look for in a women's fragrance, like that creaminess. Like sandalwood's used a lot in women's fragrances, so the creaminess of this type of musk goes well with, perfumes that have sandalwood in it. And that apple backdrop to it kind of gives it this nice bright liveliness, and it has this kind of powdery floral thing going on. Again, all great things in women's fragrances. So EDENOLIDE or APRETTOLIDE works really well for those kinds of scenarios. Again, you could probably go 5 to 10% of your perfumes formula with that musk. Now let's get into some really deeper musks. Okay, MUSCENONE. This one, let me just get a whiff of this. Okay. So this is a strong musk. Easily smelled from the bottle or a paper strip or anything. So this one you're probably not going to want to use a lot of. The odor profile for this is more of a truer kind of animalic deer musk, where you get this, not to say wet dog smell, but it has this fuzzy hairiness that could only be best described as like an animal. If you're smelling like an actual pelt of a deer or a bear or a dog, you get this fuzzy animalicness that you get from MUSCENONE. It's very fuzzy, it's very warm. Like this is definitely a warmer shade. So, but again, it's very strong. So this is a great one to go to if you want this more animalic shade that's a little bit more fuzzier, a little bit more warmer. Great to use, using sparingly for like fall or wintertime fragrances when you need that extra warmth in the base. So MUSCENONE though is pretty strong. I would probably only use this maybe 1% of my perfume formula max. Maybe 0.5 or 0.5% up to 1%, because too much of this will definitely take it to that direction where now you're actually going to get your perfume smelling musky, because the odor strength on this is pretty high. So maybe up to 1% of your perfume formula you can use for MUSCENONE. Now again, there are no rules in perfumery. Go nuts and use more if you want. If it works for you, great. I'm just saying, based on like industry averages, based on what I've seen in perfume formulas, on average they use that one around 1%. One more musk we'll talk about real quick. Where is it? Here we go. TONQUITONE. I hope I pronounce it right. TONQUITONE, whatever. So this one is so unique. It's a love it or hate it kind of musk. And this one is strong, but this is probably the most animalic smelling musk that I have ever came across. And now when I say animalic, I mean this literally smells like deer piss. It has the same shades of fuzzy animalic that MUSCENONE had, the one we just smelled, but now it has this urine kind of backdrop behind it. And it's one of those things where you love it or hate it, but just because it smells bad doesn't mean it's not good for perfumery. It's kind of like, think of it in the terms of civet. Civet smells like shit. I mean, literally smells like shit, but it's used in perfumery, and the proper right dosage of it can do exactly what you want it to do. And the same goes for TONQUITONE musk. Sure, it's very dark, animalic, fuzzy with this slightly urine kind of facet to it. But if you dose this low enough, it creates this great warmth and animalic smell that you really can't find in a lot of other musks out there. But because it's that strong and because it's kind of off-putting in the urine kind of vibe that you get from it, the most I would probably use of this in my perfume blends is probably 0.5% in my perfume formula. Like 0.1 to 0.5%. And I wouldn't go any more than that because it's pretty skanky or pretty urinous, but it is a very lifelike, animalic, deer musk kind of smell. Okay, so we went through a whole bunch of types of musk. So now let's talk about, let's mix these up, because that's the whole thing with musk is you don't want to just stick to one type of musk and be like, okay, I added musk to my perfume and that be it. You want to mix these musks up a little bit and combine them with each other so you can tailor that musky undertone to your scent that you're trying to create, whether if it's like a men's summertime, citrus freshie, or if it's a gourmand, if it's a women's, fragrance intended for winter and fall. So you've got all these now different types of musk in your palette. So keeping in mind that on industry average, musks are generally about 10 to 20% of the perfume formula. So what you can do is mix these up. So let's say I've got some notes here on some interesting ideas that you can mix them up. So let's say if you wanted let's say you're doing a men's clean summertime scent, which is probably heavy in citruses, it's got maybe a little bit of jasmine and things like that, but it's generally a very clean, bright, citrusy men's summer scent. Something like that, you would probably use a combination of GALAXOLIDE and TONALIDE. Heavier handed with GALAXOLIDE because again, you want the cleanest musk you can possibly get to go with that kind of clean men's summer freshy vibe. So if you did like 10% GALAXOLIDE with 3% TONALIDE, would be that's a combination now at 13% musk in your perfume formula. That's a great starting point for a men's summer fresh fragrance. Let's say if you wanted to work on a women's fruity floral kind of vibe, then you could actually do now, like say 10% ethylene brassylate. You can now use maybe 5% of that EDENOLIDE or APRETOLIDE, sometimes it's called. And so the combined of those two is 15% musk, but 10% ethylene brassylate, which is more of the transparent white, functional musk. But now because you're using 5% of the EDENOLIDE or APRETOLIDE, it's starting to impart some of that powdery creaminess, the apple backdrop with the powdery floral, and that works great for women's fragrance. So 10% of the white transparent musk mixed with 5% like EDENOLIDE or APRETOLIDE, the combination of the two works great in women's fragrances. So let's say if you wanted something, let's just say you wanted a good musky warm base for a fall or winter fragrance. It doesn't matter if it's men or women's. So now you would start to gravitate more towards some of the heavier musky warmer musk, but you still want to incorporate functional white musk. So you can start with, let's say, 5% GALAXOLIDE, 5% EXALTOLIDE total, and then 1% of MUSCENONE. So the combination of that is, because you're using a little bit of GALAXOLIDE, so it's more functional, transparent, and white, you're gonna do 5% EXALTOLIDE total, which again is still considered, in my opinion, a functional, white, clean musk, but it's more perceptible odor strength. So now we're getting into a little bit more warmth, but that addition of the 1% MUSCENONE is now that warmer, fuzzier, animalic kind of shade that's gonna, the combination of these two is about 11% musk. So 5% GALAXOLIDE, 5% EDENOLIDE total, 1% MUSCENONE. So that's 11% musk. But it's the way that these musks are combined to fit that odor profile for that theme of fragrance that you're going for. So that would be a good, clean, warm kind of musk. That would be great for any kind of, you know, fall or winter men or women scent. So let's say you wanted something that was more on the animalic side, something that was sweet and heavy, not to say dirty, but something for like a masculine fall, you know, winter fragrance. So again, you would do a functional musk like GALAXOLIDE, say 8% GALAXOLIDE, 2% EXALTOLIDE total, yet another functional white musk, but a little bit more radiantly in the smell. 2% AURATOUCH, because the AURATOUCH, again, what I described it earlier, it's a very sweet musk. It's very sweet, warm, and radiant. And then if you did 0.5% of TONQUITONE musk, which is that kind of animalic, slightly Uranus, the combination of those two, so we've got 12.5% musk, 8% GALAXOLIDE, 2% EXALTOLIDE total, 2% AURATOUCH, and only 0.5% of TONQUITONE will give you this great, warm, fuzzy, kind of sweet yet animalic, just great musky base for a, you know, men's fall fragrance. So that's it pretty much for this video. Hopefully that kind of shed some light on some musks, why, you know, like why people have so many different musks. It's mostly because you want to combine all these different facets of all these different musks and kind of make your own concoction of a musky base. And not all musks are musky. A lot of them are very clean and transparent, and they're functional. So yeah, so hopefully you guys kind of got some more ideas from it, and you know, after watching this video, you probably aren't afraid to use musks a little bit more. I know, like I said in the beginning, when I first started perfuming, I was afraid to use musks, but now that I've understood the differences between all the different ones, yeah, I go crazy with the musk sometimes, because you have to really understand which musk, you know, which musk you're using and why you're using it is also important. So yeah, so that was my quick video on musks, and we'll see you next time. So until next time.